It's been a busy week, politically speaking, and joining us now to give their take on the political world, Denver Post columnist Krista Kafer and political reporter Blair Miller from the denverchannel.com. Good to see both of you.
Good to be here.
All right, so let's talk about the video of Lori saying we don't see an elected lawmaker leaving jail that often. She says it was an accident. Authorities are leading us to think perhaps something otherwise.
Right. Well, the criminal complaint that we got earlier in the week said that basically she knowingly put this thing through security, and it was pretty blatant in detail beyond that. So we don't know exactly what happened, but it's pretty clear that the TSA agent saw the weapon in the X-ray machine, and then they went through protocol from there.
Well, it seems like there's really two options here. Either she made a mistake or she's an international terrorist. That's the only reason why somebody would bring a gun onto a plane. I'm pretty sure she's not a terrorist. I think she made a stupid mistake.
Well, we'll see how this goes through the court system. It's a bit ambiguous as to exactly what happened there.
Like, why take her to jail? I mean, usually they just confiscate the weapon because people do make these kinds of errors.
Right, the TSA, I mean, I think you reported the numbers, Blair. I mean,
well, that's
it's
the interesting
often.
thing. It was there's 106 times that Denver police responded to DIA for the same thing this year, but Representative Sain was one of only 2 arrests. So I think that sort of got people wondering, what exactly happened here, and we haven't exactly gotten the full story from police, or perhaps we have. The district attorney is the one who's going to really have to determine what's going on here, I think.
Sure, and a lot of these things are recorded by the TSA, so perhaps if we get some video, we'll have some clarity about all of that. All right, another big issue has been sexual harassment at the workplace, but we're also seeing that lawmakers are caught up in all of this. Senator Al Franken announcing his resignation. Initially, he was apologetic and I think tried to have an attitude of let's move forward, but obviously this became very contentious in D.C.
Yeah, heads are rolling, and I think it's a good thing. I think it's going to change corporate culture. And here's the deal. You don't kiss people who don't want to be kissed. Don't drop trowel in front of people who don't want that. Don't touch people who don't want to be touched. Don't do photographs when you're a U.S. senator of touching people's body parts. I mean, it's kind of a duh moment. Didn't we learn this in kindergarten?
Right. Well, and that's the interesting thing with this is in his speech on Thursday, he said, he didn't admit to really doing anything, at least while as a senator. And then right after saying he was going to resign, he pointed to the president and to Roy Moore, saying we have a guy accused of these same things in the White House, a guy in Alabama who might get elected to the Senate on Tuesday. And he said that he believes there's kind of a double standard there.
Yeah, there's always a double standard.
Well, and it also has ignited, once again, most recently with his resignation, this conversation within each party about how things should be handled, because within the Democratic Party, I think it's fair to say there was some division about whether he should stay or go, and it really put leadership and some of the rank and file members at odds with each other.
Well, I think it's time to clean house, and he's right to point out to the double standard. When Republicans look at Democrats, they think they're doing worse. When Democrats look at Republicans, they think their guys are worse. The fact is that I think all these guys have got to go. This kind of behavior has been tolerated for far too long.
Well, and I think the interesting thing with it is now the Democrats pushed Conyers and Franken to resign, I think assuming that perhaps those seats were safe, whereas Republicans have said, oh, now Franken, maybe you don't have to resign. Let's go through the ethics committee, perhaps putting something up for Roy Moore in Alabama if he's elected on Tuesday.
I'm hoping he loses his election. I think that's one way for the voters to say, no, that kind of behavior is intolerable.
But if he is elected, I mean, that will really be the true test to the culture right now among lawmakers.
It's true, and Senator Cory Gardner has promised to push, some kind of a censure. And so particularly in the case of Moore, even though it was a long time ago, adult contact with a minor is worse than, I would say, adult contact with other, unwilling adults. And so that kind of behavior, even though it was a long time ago, cannot be tolerated.
All right, let's look about what's going on overseas, because there's a lot. The Middle East has always been a contentious place, but now with the announcement by President Trump about moving the embassy to Jerusalem, the only nation in the world to do that. I mean, there are many sides to all of this. I mean, there's even some disagreement within his own party to an extent about whether or not this was a symbolic move that's created unnecessary strife.
it was a destabilizing move. I mean, you've got two groups of people, two tribes, if you will, that want the same land. And I think it's in our best interest, it's in their best interest, it's really in everybody's best interest that a peaceable, equitable plan be worked out for both groups of people. And by sort of putting your thumb on the scale, which is what Trump did when he has decided to move the embassy to Jerusalem, he just destabilizes a situation that wasn't good to begin with.
Well, that's what is kind of puzzling to me, at least, is that he's been, his son-in-law, Jared Kushner, has been supposedly working on this peace agreement since they got into office, and, that's been one of the things they've talked about a lot. And then he goes and then makes this decision right now in the middle of this process, and there's travel warnings coming out for the first time in, decades and stuff. Worldwide just because of this, and it immediately destabilized that region. And it's going to be interesting to see what happens. He said it was going to be a delayed thing, but this is also something that happened under the Clinton administration. It's just been delayed and delayed, I think, in order to try and get something done with the Palestine-Israel process.
Well, and the president will argue, though, it's a promise kept from his campaign.
That is true. I was going to say that he made a lot of promises, some of them good, some of them bad. This is probably one that should have been left on the cutting room floor.
All right, we have to let it go right now. We're running out of time. Krista and Blair, great to have you both here.
Yeah, thanks.
And a reminder that if you ever want to let us know what's going on, to feel free to follow us on Twitter. You can also email us at thedenverchannel.com. We're always looking for segment ideas. And thank you for joining us for Politics Unplugged this week. We'll see you back here next Sunday. Have a good rest of the weekend.